Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Well, welcome. It's a great turnout. Thanks for coming out. Welcome to Smart Business, Small Business, an SBA speaker session. And this is coinciding with Small Business Week, which is organized by the Business Development Bank of Canada. My name is Glenn Drexage, and I'm here on behalf of UBC Library and the Irving K. Barber Learning Center. I want to thank everyone who's here attending this event in person and virtually through our live webcast. We really value your support, so thank you for that. And I just want to take a few moments to briefly talk about the Small Business Accelerator, which is the program that's basically putting on this event tonight. It's also known as the SBA, shortened. It launched in November 2010 as an initiative of the Irving K. Barber Learning Center. And the SBA is curated by business librarians, and it provides access to industry-specific resources and information for entrepreneurs and small businesses throughout BC. It's a gateway to business information, education, and assistance that's current and trustworthy. So Aaliyah McCauley, who's down front here taking webcast questions, she's our community engagement librarian, and she's here tonight as well, as you can all see. She'd be happy to speak with you more about the project. And I also encourage you to visit our website at www.sba-bc.ca. So just a little bit about the format for tonight. Both speakers will talk for about 20 minutes each, and then we'll turn it over to the audience for about 15 minutes or so of question and answers, and then we'll have an informal networking reception following that. And just a message for our webcast viewers, we definitely encourage you to send in any questions you might have via email, and we'll do our best to get to as many of those as we can. And our Twitter hashtag for this event is hashtag UBCSBA for those following on the Twitterverse. So I also just want to note that Larissa, our photographer, will be taking some photos tonight, including some photos during the networking reception. So if you do not want to be included in any of that, please just let us know, and we're happy to comply. So now on to our speakers. Our first speaker is Paul Cubbon. Paul's a marketing instructor at UBC's Sauder School of Business. He teaches marketing in the MBA programs and has been a member of the core faculty team there since 2005. He also teaches in a range of executive programs and many Bachelor of Commerce courses. His interests are in marketing communication, customer behavior, innovation and competition, and e-business. Paul's interested in helping others become curious about learning, looking at situations in different ways, facilitating improved teamwork, and linking theory to action. As I mentioned, he's taught a wide range of courses. Those touch on advertising, digital and web marketing, innovation, and entrepreneurship, but they also include an emphasis on branding and reputation, consumer behavior, and customer experience. In 2011, Paul was awarded the Sauder Talking Stick for pedagogical innovation, and he's been a student shortlisted nominee for an MBA Teaching Excellence Award in 2006, 07, 08, and 09. Paul's career in industry includes 3 years in advertising, and he continues to consult in industry, working with high-tech startups, traditional manufacturing and service organizations, and government agencies. Tonight, his talk is entitled, Why Planning to Fail Can Help You Succeed Sooner, Designing Low-Cost, Rapid-Fire Experiments to Advance Your Business. So please join me in welcoming Paul Cubbon.
Thanks very much, Glenn. Thanks, everybody. So I think now that means I have to be about 3 minutes shorter, because that was a long intro, but it's nice to be here, and we'll see how we can take this forward. So, you heard about me, so we don't need to go any more on that, and we'll move forward onto the topic of today. When I was asked to speak, I thought about all the things which could put people to sleep in the evening, so that I could try and avoid those. I know that when you come out to something, you're looking for something a bit new, or a bit different, and maybe a bit provocative, so that you're not just going through the same old, same old. So this title here, hopefully it makes you stop and think a little bit, and I want to try and put to you over the next few minutes that planning to fail sometimes with a purpose could actually be to your advantage in succeeding quicker and in a bigger way. So if you think I'm crazy at this point, then feel free to leave, but hopefully it's worth your while. So, moving on. I like to use metaphors a lot, and you can see here a helicopter and the oil drill on the left. And the intent really here is to say you need to be able to take the context of the big picture, and then you need to get down on the ground and do some dirty work. You need to drill, get some data, and then get back up and see what it all looks like again. So the metaphor here really is don't just stay in your helicopter or in your proverbial ivory tower and look out there and be hopeful. You need to get your sleeves rolled up, but then put it into context. So if I move on, there's a nice book which really captures a lot of what I am trying to talk about here today. And you can see the title, Do It Wrong Quickly, How the Web Changes the Old Marketing Rules. And the key premise here really is that the web is an example of many things which are changing in society, which have given us an opportunity to really test and get feedback loops. And what I want to put to you is that you don't just want to do crazy stuff, because crazy stuff, as Seth kind of points out, for any Seth Godin fans here, this was a book of his from a few years ago called Meatball Sunday, Is Your Marketing Out of Sync? And his point is often people in a hurry to do new stuff just load it on top layer after layer, and it's about as appetizing as a meatball ice cream sundae. Not good. So the thing here about saying plan to fail and systematically experiment the message is not about do random stuff and hope that it works. It's about systematically test and experiment. So what does this look like? Well, I want to suggest to you that a decade or so is a long time in business, and it's certainly been a long time in the marketing field that I'm involved in. And I want to just kind of suggest to you some of the macro changes which make it more reasonable that you might systematically experiment and learn from some small failures today in a way that you might not have done a few years ago. So the old way was often characterized by long planning cycles and the mass media, extended lead times, really one big roll of the dice, one big play in the budget year, and limited data, slow, opaque, and this tended to mean that there was really low flexibility for short-term reaction. So and it meant that people became conservative and risk-averse, I found, in many businesses. They were afraid to fail, and the general way that people were treated in business was, whatever you do, don't make a mistake. There was the old adage when IBM used to be in the computer business. Seems funny saying that still, doesn't it? When IBM used to be in the computer business, then they used to say nobody ever got fired for buying Big Blue. And the idea is that it was a safe purchase because they were reputable. So the new way, by contrast, multiple layers of plans, not just a long-term plan. The idea that you can have kind of subsets of plans so that you can be agile and move quickly. And that media is personal. We have micromedia. Glenn was trying to cajole George and myself to get up and speak, and meanwhile we were tweeting about the event to whoever might be out there kind of checking it out. It allows then for short lead times, multiple plays. You don't have to just have one big play. And most importantly here is good data, fast feedback loops. And we'll talk a bit about that more momentarily. This means, I would argue, that it provides an environment for you to have high flexibility to do not only short-term reaction, but short-term proaction. You can be proactive about testing stuff and not just kind of saying, well, it's risky, I've got to wait a long time, etc. So, let's just take this a little bit further. This is really about disruption from the norm. If you're going to be a new business or a successful growing business, you better disrupt the status quo. If you're just trying to conform, you're playing to the rules that others have set up. And so what I'm going to do for the rest of my time here is I'm going to talk to you really about learning from startups, and not just any startup, but mostly startups that have come from people that were students or recent graduates when they did them. And I want to try and kind of show how people who are in a really young, early-stage startup mode often are much more experimental than people who are in an established status quo. So this is really business as unusual and about systematic experimentation. So The company IDEO, some of you may know of it. It's a famous California-based company in the design of products and services, and increasingly training companies to be creative and innovative. And they talk about failure as data. And I want to just dwell on that for a moment, because you want to be able to kind of make your forward-based decisions, not on, I hope I get lucky today, or I must be brilliant because I kind of was successful last time, but more on learning from data and running a series of tests. One of the companies that I think follows this well is Clearly Contacts, or Coastal Contacts, and I see a few people in the room who I know were at a session this morning where at the business school we hosted a number of executives from Clearly Contacts, and I flip between the two names, Clearly Contacts and Coastal Contacts, because their name in Canada is Clearly Contacts. In the US, until recently, it was Coastal Contacts, now just Coastal. How many people here have ever bought a pair of glasses or lenses from Clearly Contacts? All right, about a quarter, third of you. I was about to say who's heard of them, but then I thought, well, they kind of saturate the kind of media at the moment. And so, interesting story, because they're 11 years old, started by Roger Hardy in his basement in Richmond 11 years ago, and they're now doing somewhere around $180 million, got about 20% of the Canadian contact lens market, and ambitious expansion plans in a number of countries. And one of the reasons I put them up to start with here as an example is I remember last year Braden Hopner, who's the head of web marketing there, and he told a little story to my student group last year which really resonated. He said, 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon is the most important hour of the week for us. And I thought, yeah, he's having a bit of fun with this. They're going to get the beer fridge open and so on. And that wasn't the point. He said, between 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, we set up an A/B test that will run, or several A/B tests that will run over the weekend. And on Monday morning, we got 48 hours of data. And so, obviously, in some businesses, the idea of running an A/B test where, the simplest form, let's say it's an email newsletter, and the headline in version A is 10% off, and the headline in version B is buy 3 and get the 4th one free for your friends. We're not sure which one's going to work better. We could spend weeks arguing about it in our offices. We don't. We run a little test. We send out the email to A to 100 people, email B to 100 people, and on Monday we find out that 90 people voted for this one and nobody voted for that one. Sorry, Paul, your idea sucked. We're going to go with this one. The data from the consumers tells us to go this way. Right? And so this idea of A/B testing works really well when you can get fast data loops. In some businesses, you have to be more thoughtful about how you set these things up. And so the idea of the most important hour of the week being when you set up your test, where you know that you're going to find out something that doesn't work, is incredibly liberating. They run their business on data and iterating what they're doing based on learning from the test. So, at UBC, we have a number of programs where we try to help people set up businesses. And some people say, can you teach entrepreneurship? I don't think you really can. I mean, you can teach the theory of it. But what you can do is you can create an environment where people get to practice and make mistakes. And the idea that you can make mistakes so that when you then go and do it for real is kind of quite a supporting thing as well, I believe. So we've had a long-term program between commerce and engineering, and we're now currently involved in talks with a number of other faculties to try and partner with commerce about trying to create the opportunities for, indeed, partnership for starting up businesses. And so these are really not conventional courses. They're not write a business plan courses. They're how to start a business course and providing the space for that. And I see a few alumni of those programs in the audience, and more of them in a moment. So many of these businesses, they're embryonic businesses. They fail. And people might say, sometimes we're asked, what's the success rate for startups from these courses? And we say, we might get 1 a year. And they say, wow, that's not very good. But then we go and talk to the alumni and we say, what did you do next? And they said, I got the bug. I went and started something else up with somebody else. And I've got a couple of guys in the room at the moment just back there who I didn't know were coming tonight, and they were exactly this. They kind of worked on projects in the course, and projects kind of dived and bombed, and they went and did something else, which is kind of nice. So a couple of examples, and I'm going to go through these really quickly. These are all, there's about 7 or 8 of these, which were started by students in the last couple of years and have become real businesses. So Recon Instruments, set up by 3 former MBAs from SODA, and these are basically heads-up ski goggles. And what they did was they came up with this idea, and everyone said they're crazy because they wanted to sell ski and snowboard goggles for $500 because they'd have lots of kind of smart data in them and downloadable. And they basically challenged the price function norms in goggles. They said, we think people will buy this, we're going to make it, and we're going to test it out. And they kept testing and refining, and they've sold out for 2 years running now. They're up to about 70 employees down in Yaletown. It's quite remarkable, and this is a Vancouver success story. So Recon Instruments. Here's another one, smaller stage. And again, I've deliberately put in the kind of headshots of some of the students involved. This is Colin O'Leary. He's actually an engineer, graduated a year or 2 ago. This is AOS Biomedical. This is about making X-ray tape that you can put on people's bodies so that the surgeon can actually cut more accurately. So you keep people in the hospital for a shorter time, they're in less pain, and they recover quicker. So they are still pre-commercialization, but they've been going 18 months, and they kind of they really looked at high upsides to improving imperfect systems. So they've tested and tested and tested. Right? They're trying to get the right dye, and they get the surgeons testing for them, and so on. Next one, Clinic Book. Again, some of the people in the room will know Winnie Lai, who was one of the partners that started up Clinic Book, and they basically here were looking to add user convenience to booking dentist appointments, and again, this is working very nicely in its early stages. One of the oldest successes from our program, Energy Aware. There's been a lot of controversy of late in the province around energy measuring meters in BC, but this is a BC company that does most of its business outside of BC, and these are actually in-home meters which will allow people to be able to see how much they're using at different times of the day with different devices and kind of therefore monitor their usage. And here's Janice Cheam. She actually was on the front cover of the August issue of BC Business, and she graduated just a few years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, so kind of pretty cool. And moving on, okay, this is Arnold Lung, and he started when he graduated doing websites for people. You know, it's kind of, I need to make some money, kind of a couple of $100, I'll do your website for you. He realized very quickly there was no money in that. Right? He graduated 5 years ago, then now the 2nd largest Drupal developer in North America, and again based here in Vancouver, went into specialized software. I keep going through these. Here's one about water and clean water. This is about purifying water and low-cost clean water for India. That was the business plan that they submitted. Actually, their test market is going to be in rural northern Canada because that's where they can get kind of a test client. Here we go. Here's Smart Picks, and this is Ray. You can see in the audience here, and I didn't know he was going to be here tonight, but the way I kind of put this up was he started doing one-off nightclub events in Canada, and they found out that really most of their business was US-based long-term installations. And you'll have to ask him the fuller story from that and what Smart Picks is. You might just find some customers before you're done raising near the back on the left there. This last one, Reflex, this was one of the students who founded this. He also went through our program, and he'll tell you that they had the worst project in the course. They kind of didn't follow instructions very well and didn't do very well at all. Kind of reappeared a year later. They had just won a global competition based in New York where they'd beaten out teams from India, Italy, and North America. And this is about kind of, again, patient safety and monitoring. So they came back and they tried stuff, nothing to lose. So why do I put all this up? It's to try and show you that, first of all, we know we don't have many head offices here, but we have a lot of... Here's Andy. Reflex. I just showed you. There we are. We're full of entrepreneurship here in Vancouver, which is a good job because there aren't many big head offices here. And many of them are becoming big employers. But they've got there nearly always because what they've implemented wasn't the business plan that they submitted. Right? If they had banked on getting it right first time, they would have given up before they'd ever made a sale. They've iterated and tested, and sometimes it's been kind of an uncomfortable ride, but they've been prepared to try things. So I guess my question I throw out rhetorically now, but maybe more broadly later for the Q&A, is what can you learn from this if you're in a small or medium-sized business? You know, maybe you become conservative, you're risk-averse because you don't want to make a mistake. And my challenge to you is can you plan to make some good mistakes? Okay? And how do you stay entrepreneurial once you're in existing business? This concept of being entrepreneurial mindset within an organization is something that we certainly try to encourage in the business school, and I'm spending quite a lot of time on now. So some of the reasons for not experimenting and being conservative, I'm not going to really go there. I think that they're our default. It's kind of like, well, what happens if I get it wrong? And actually, being conservative might be the worst thing you can do. One of the key things for you is to think about your reward systems that you have in place for people. If you want them to experiment, you can't say, you screwed up again. Right? I want you to take risks, but don't screw up. Right? What do you think people do? They say, oh, well, I value my job. I want to get the bonus. I'm not going to take chances. So I put up these rather kind of strange acronyms for you. For the older amongst us in the audience, Wysiwyg, kind of early days of computers and interfaces, what you see is what you get, right? That was before you kind of actually had nice GUI interfaces. And then these variations on it. WYSIWYG, what you measure is what you get. Data is king, right? Set up tests where you've got data, don't just do random tests. And then WYRIWYG, the R, what you reward is what you get. So if you threaten people with punishment for making mistakes, they won't take any chances for you. Right? But if you reward them, kind of because you want to encourage them to do things differently, then you will be positively surprised, I believe. So be at the top, not the bottom. And so my kind of personal mantras here, and I kind of developing these, I've promised my dean that next time my business card gets reprinted, it's going to say that my job title is now going to be navigator, interpreter, coach, experimenter, connector, and cheerleader. I think that this is what you've got to do if you want to encourage people in any aspect of their life, whether they're learning or whether you're running a business, to do is you've got to provide some scaffolding so that people can test stuff and then get out of the way. The scaffolding is the kind of the systematic direction, and then get out of the way and let them surprise you and come back and report. So finally, just wanted to conclude my little piece here and say that innovation does start here in British Columbia, in Vancouver, certainly at UBC, and we are trying to help create a generation of people who will take good risks and make mistakes that help them to be successful. Thank you. Thanks. That's it.
Ideas and advice in that brief 20-minute presentation. Now I'm going to introduce George Moen, our next speaker. George is a UBC alumnus, a self-described serial entrepreneur, and the president of Blends, the Canadian coffee company. With more than 30 years of experience in food and franchising, George specializes in transitioning small businesses into big business success stories. He entered his first business venture while still a student at UBC studying marketing and commerce. With a couple of classmates, George launched the Sandwich Tree chain of restaurants. As a sports aficionado, he's also built a partnership with a computer programmer and a prominent professional hockey player and coach. And he's developed a coaching program used by minor hockey league coaches. George was appointed president of Blends, the Canadian coffee company, in February 2007. His mandate there is to support the original three founders to transition towards strategic planning and directorship of the popular coffee retail chain. And his talk this evening is entitled Challenges and Business Opportunities for Small Business This Year. Please join me in welcoming George.
Can you hear me now? Excellent. I've changed the topic, because I'm an entrepreneur. I adapt and I improvise. My name is George Moen. I graduated kind of twice from UBC. I actually quit in my 5th year with 3 courses to go, and I tell this story fondly. I started my first business while in my 5th year, which back then you got a year of arts, and then you had a 4-year commerce degree. You guys get it off easy because you got 20% less time. And so I just quit. And I went off and I started the sandwich tree to the chagrin of my parents, who had paid for most of this 5 years. Because I had the bug of being an entrepreneur. I was just driven. And I started my first business in 1978. And tonight what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically tell you the lessons I've learned that I can impart. These are my lessons, and some of them I think are valuable if you're going to be in business at any level, whether you're a solo entrepreneur or run a multi-billion-dollar company. I originally gave some of the components of this speech back in 2009. I was another small business. As a matter of fact, they did me a favor, and I had my people put up the blog here today, because I don't do my own blogging, because I don't know how. But I am a social media expert. And so what I did is I'm going to go through things I've learned to help give you the secrets to success. Who wants those? Yeah. Well, first of all, fail. All right? My biggest lesson was being broke. But basically what I've learned over the 38 years in entrepreneurship is you can go to georgemoen.com and get this on your BlackBerry or iPhone. But the first thing I learned in business, and I still do, is I pursue my passion. Like even today, as I am the president of Lens Coffee, I launched a digital newspaper and aggregating bloggers in Vancouver. It's just getting off the ground. Citizen journalism, because a lot of people just don't have that ability to have a voice in today's world. We have some folks out on the streets today that are basically telling us in real time. But so I'm constantly experimenting in the world of entrepreneurship, and because I can, I now have made a little bit of money, and I can afford the luxury of trying things that I like, that I have a passion about. And I've got a couple of other businesses that I'm pursuing that could be my next big thing. I think I got one more big one in me before I want to go to walk the beaches of the world. So the first thing I learned over my life as an entrepreneur is pursuing my passion. Work with something you're passionate about. Don't do something because you can. Because everybody pursues a paycheck or do, there's a gal I know recently I ran into, she's trying to figure out what she wants to do. She works in a traditional job, but she's just really unhappy. And the one thing is, not that long ago, I sat in the crowd listening to talking heads like me, and the time between there and here is a blink of an eye, and you don't want to waste it. And so that's kind of one of the first things I discovered. Work to a plan, kinda. Like I'm like, the analogy I tend to use is I'm like an architect building a building, and my construction crew is only 2 floors below me. I don't know what the end game looks on some of my companies. Really? When I came out of UBC in the 70s, it was about the business plan and all the other stuff. I sucked at business planning. I used to launch. And I liked Steve Jobs, and we've lost a great innovator in Steve Jobs just recently. He created products that he wanted, that he thought people liked. And Apple didn't do a hell of a lot of research. Yeah, there's places for it, but the bottom line of it is that don't be afraid because you have an idea and everybody thinks you suck at it, that it isn't a good idea. Because the people around you love you. They don't want you to fail, and they're probably actually helping you fail by telling you you can't. Okay? Who's got a mom and a dad like that? Oh, yeah. All right. Yeah. Go become my mom wanted me to become a teacher. She thought that was cool. You do have to, like, money is a gauge, right? I like money. It does good things. It buys good stuff. You travel around and buy as many iPods as you want, which I do. But it's one of the measuring sticks. It's not the only measuring sticks, but it's the one that's the common denominator. And I've been really broke, and I've been really rich, and I tell you which I approve. Being broke isn't one of them. Have a mission. I'm not motivated by money. I thought I was when I was younger. I had this $1 million bill on my bathroom mirror at UBC because I wanted to be a millionaire. I did that a couple of times, actually. Made it, lost it, kept it. But I realized it wasn't what was driving me to success, right? It was the other things that, like speaking, sharing what you've learned, the things working out, making things actually work. Those were things that I became far more passionate about. You still need cash. There's no question about it. But great things have never been done because of money. That was a lesson I learned because I was really money motivated when I was younger. On time, on spec, on budget. That's the only people I do business with. If you're not on time, on spec, on budget, I don't do business with you. Business isn't a democracy. It isn't a place to go have hugs, right? You pay your bills, you do the job, and if you screw up, I fire your ass. Simple. And I'll still like you, but I'll never do business with you again. It's just the way the world should work. And I think the first thing you do is you always, especially your first time you're an employer and things aren't going well, you always carry the people you shouldn't. Learn how to fire well. It's the best way to save cash. Fail forward. I do it rough until I do it well. I don't over-plan or over-engineer things. I sometimes launch with a half an idea. I'm okay with that. It scares the hell out of people around me sometimes. I remember when I was with, they said I started with Sandwich-Tree, which I did. And I walked into my Sandwich-Tree head office one day, and I said, we're opening another division. And they said, what is it? I said, we're going to open up an internet company. And they went, what? And one thing I discovered was the guys that were selling dial-up access, this is before broadband, right? Dial-up access and website and domain registration that you could actually get for $90 a pop. We actually had to go to UBC for that, CAs at the time. Nobody had to do it, but all the guys in tech really sucked at sales. So we had actually over 3,000 hosted business customers in like 6 months, and we were running that out of a sandwich shop. It was really cool. You can't do that today because people think you're really crazy. But that actually got me into other really cool stuff. Don't be afraid to fail. Failure is, I used to be. I was really insecure in my young days, especially at UBC. And I didn't want to fail. But I had some great failures. I'm talking big ones, not little ones. I remember I bounced checks to 200 people once. That was really sucked. I got a call from a mom whose 15-year-old daughter worked for me in Calgary, one of my sandwich trees, and said, you're an asshole. And I said, yeah, I know. I felt really bad. I got them all paid because my bank had pulled my loan that day. And I had to, I was down about $3 million. But when I discovered when you're 26 years old back then and you're down $3 million, it's actually the bank's problem. It really is. I was driving around in a borrowed car, living in an apartment at $189 down in the West End. I didn't have nothing to lose, man. But we negotiated out of it. I did pay them back, and we still remained friends. And it was the Bank of it was the Royal that called my loan. I don't do business with them anymore. But one of the things I discovered is I pursue a debt-free life. And you can't in the beginning, usually. But when, the biggest problem with people that start making money, and guess what? I made it all. I was 26 years old. I had a hot car. I was single. It was the 70s and 80s. And it was a lot of fun, man. But it was way more fun then than now. But you get drunk on the cash flow. And and my brother-in-law, I don't think he's watching. He really sucked as an accountant. But I was in debt a lot, and I didn't manage my business well. That was a big lesson for me. But over the years, I got out of debt, and I don't like debt. Debt to me is killer because you start making business decisions based on your cash flow needs, and usually that's incompatible with good business. You go for short-term solutions, short-term deals, and it's a bad gig. If you knew what it was like to be debt-free, you'd work harder to get there. Did you hear what I said? If you knew what it's like, some of you may be already there, but I came from my mom was on welfare. I came from a very underprivileged group of people, and I was motivated originally by money, so I didn't come with a golden spoon. I grew up in a little place called Surrey. Yeah, I actually, my friends still had to first grow up, but but pursuing a debt-free life is really the way to go. I don't have a mortgage. I pay cash for everything. If I use a credit card because I can get travel points, but that's kind of what I've done over the years. And you don't get there right away. And what's cool about the 21st century, and specifically at UBC and some other things, is the capital of the future isn't money. The capital of the future lies between your ears. It's intellectual property. Facebook, okay? Things like that. Most of these companies that start up here don't need a lot of cash. What they do is they need an idea, okay? And the internet has provided you with massive amounts of distribution and an ability to get to market quickly, and so you don't need a lot of money, right? But you need good ideas, and there's always a little money around for good ideas, and UBC is kind of cool because they're starting this venture capital fund. Diversify. I don't have one business. I've got ADD. So I've run some tech companies. I have some food service companies. We have 3 food service chains, kinda. And I've been in all kinds of, I believe in distribution. I think the secret to real wealth is distribution of anything, whether it's, ABC, railroad distribution, network marketing, great training for those who decide to go in there, cheap, but you can learn more there than university. Anything in distribution. And today, it's all about distribution. It's distribution of ideas, and it's distribution of products and services. But always have multiple streams of income, because when one horse dies, you better be riding another one. I don't believe in doing one thing. I don't believe in focus, and I do not believe in a balanced life. It does not exist. It's a myth, right? I think that you've got to, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you have to be all in to win, however you define winning. Always be a student. I'm a consummate reader. This thing is so cool, man. I could pull up Bloomberg, the Huffington Post. I can read all the major newspapers, anywhere, So I'm constantly reading and learning. I embrace change. I like change. People hate it. The people who embrace change make more money. Fact. Read the other stuff up there. Networking is the key. All of my success has come through loose networks. If you do not know how to network, go get a job. Okay? If you want to be in business, you have to build a network. And the bigger your network, the bigger your net worth. Period. All of my businesses, all my successes have come through networking. That's why I speak. Because I don't know, my future business partners may be sitting here in the room. Right? Besides, a couple 10 years from now, you'll need some gray hair. I'll have some. Some of you will have some startups. Let's go pull that Moen in, give them a really huge amount of money to become a director. Works for me. Network without expectations. Because, you see, the one thing I always notice, particularly when you're young, you make the big mistakes. I did too. You sit there and you look at somebody and you go, well, you know what, I don't get it. So you toss the card aside. How many's got a BlackBerry or an iPhone with over 1,000 people in the database? Anybody got that? Blair Kaplan up there, right? So when you're talking to Blair, you're not talking to one person. You're talking to 1,000 people, right? So don't underestimate the power of a casual network. I was at a networking event the other day. It was really cool. This gal, she comes in, she does home spa things, right? And so you have this sort of perception of what she does. And this other guy comes in, and he runs this huge division for this company, multi-billion-dollar German conglomerate for distribution for pharmaceutical. And so I'm watching the two of them talk, and he's looking for new business, right? And he's kind of dissing her, not paying too much attention. And she says, well, I know the founder of such and such a company. And his ears perk up. Right? Turns out to be $500 million a year company, and they just so happen looking for distribution here on the West Coast. It's a 7-figure contract for this guy coming from this very young lady who you wouldn't think would be a good fit. So our prejudice get in the way, particularly with networking. Don't underestimate the power of the person you're standing in front of. And this is a good one because I learned from this. Don't grow a hero complex when you have success. Success is only temporary, right? It really is, because we don't get out of here alive, no matter how rich you are. Ask Steve Jobs. I think at the end of the day, when you start thinking and believe in your own stuff is one of the biggest downfalls. I think you have to basically embrace your success and be proud of what you do, but share that with others. And then when you get a chance, you mentor people. Because in mentoring, you learn. You know why I like coming back to talk to places like this? Because you're all fresh. And you all have ideas. And you all have enthusiasm. And I suck off of that. Right? Because I come back here and I basically learn again. I'm a constant student. Because the one thing about getting older is you actually get a little smarter. And you understand and recognize talent a little bit better. And you also recognize and see ideas. And I like talking to people because people, to me, is basically the future. Because I think the next 10 years is going to be challenging in business. I think being in business for yourself is going to be key. I think that we're in for a shitstorm on the world economy. I think that it's only a matter of time before we see the devaluation of the U.S. dollar. And I believe that if you have to have control of your own destiny because the old ways ain't going to work anymore, and we have to basically reconcile the checkbooks on a worldwide basis, and that's going to be disruptive. I think China's in for a big awakening when they discover that property values can go down. I think you're going to see the collapse potentially of the euro, and the United States, they can't pay the money back. So what does that mean? It's going to be mainly for Canadians. We're in pretty good shape here, but at the end of the day, you got to be making sure you have your powder dry. Because if you think it's going to be business as usual, you're dreaming. It is going to be business as unusual, and it's going to be an interesting time. Although, be said that some of the great fortunes are made in the toughest times. And anything that can bring and simplify and take the friction out of sales processes and help businesses like that are going to be big winners. But the Kennedys made their most money in the Depression, right? So it doesn't matter whether the economy is up or down. You just have to know how to make money in each one. Protect yourself and your families, because at the end of the day, that's what will be your bedrock as you go forward and embrace scary entrepreneurism, and never quit. Because when you're down $3 million and life really sucks, you tend to wanna. But out of that adversity came great successes, and in my particular case, I had a lot of blessings and met a lot of people, and I live a pretty good lifestyle because of the hard works I invested in the past. But it was a crooked path to success. And remember one thing, businesses fail, people don't. If you fail in business, get over it and move on to your next one. And now we'll have some questions. Thank you.
Is this on? Yeah. Thanks very much, George and Paul. Two great talks. And yeah, we're going to have about a 15-minute question and answer session now. I just want to point out that we have a standing mic here and also a wireless mic available. We ask that you please use one of those for the sake of our webcast viewers too, so they can hear the questions and so on. And we may have some questions. No, nothing yet. Okay, for those watching us on the webcast, please do feel free to email in any questions you might have. So we have about 15 minutes. Would somebody like to kick it off?
Just a general question for Paul. I know George talked a lot about his, past failures and things that didn't really work out the way he wanted to. Could you maybe touch on some of your past failures that you learned from and kind of allowed you to, learn from your mistakes and advance as an entrepreneur?
Interesting question. I'm just trying to think where to go to on mistakes. The older you get, the more you realize that you've made lots of mistakes. When I was a student, yeah, I was about to say, as a student, I was a very poor student. That was my problem as an undergraduate. I thought that I'd gone to this kind of 3-year drinking party, so that's probably not one to kind of refer back to. But I've done a number of things. I'd say that my first career was I was an employee, but I was an employee trying to get out. So I coined latched onto the term entrepreneur. And what I did was I realized actually that most doors that looked closed weren't really. So I treated them as though they were open, and occasionally I'd get them slammed in my face, and I suppose that's when I made the mistake. And then, occasionally you'd lose a job or be told that you were on probation or whatever. But I really kind of pushed to the edge this idea of, don't ask for permission, right? Beg forgiveness after, and depending.
I agree with that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And so, I mean, this idea of is the door half open or is there a little bit of it open? Can you charge through it? Because if you wait for people to open doors for you, you've lost that window. Okay.
Okay, anybody else? Yeah.
George, what did you tell your employees who spent an evening fighting against the rage of the mob?
What did I tell my employees?
Yeah, how did you get them through that?
How to turn a riot into a marketing opportunity. It was interesting. What was happening that night, we'd been through the other riot as blends, and we had a bad feeling at the end of the second period, so we started shutting down our stores. And so I quickly phoned my head office team to get a hold of the franchise partners to start shutting down the operations. And we were successful with the exception of one. The Georgia Street store where the staff got basically trapped inside. She had shut her store, it was locked, but the crowd was so large and he was getting so rambunctious that they decided to stay in operation, and then they retreated into and barricaded themselves into the back room. It wasn't until the next day that we really had to worry about trying to get people through it. That group was very traumatized, and there was the owner, 2 employees, and a customer, and we had a lot of. It was a lot of there was that group. We had 2 other stores that were damaged, so we quickly got our people out. The one thing about adversity, as I find with people generally, is they circle the wagons, and everybody in an organization, including franchise partners, circle the wagons. And I got down there after the blockade was lifted, because you couldn't get down there until about 4:35 in the morning. But by that time, the city had, the cleanup and the healing had started. But how you get through it is you focus on what's important. And the first thing is, in our business, it was the safety of our customers or our staff. And then the replacement of the property. But we have good insurance and all that kind of stuff. But now we're just going to sue the bastards. So that's what we're doing, and how we're getting through it is that we're making those people that decided that they were playing a video game accountable. And so we're not quite through it from that perspective, but there's some lawsuits that'll be launched soon, I think. Does that answer your question? There you go.
So just another question for George. I was actually one of the startup guys that Paul mentioned up there. So in our SmartPicks.
Okay.
So in our business, it's quite hardware costs are one of our biggest challenges.
Yeah.
And so you talked about debt. On a day-to-day basis, we go into debt, and then we have cash, debt, cash. How do you fight the urge to make those short-term decisions to stay out of debt? And I know you said debt sucks, and I've kind of taken that stance too, but when you
say hardware, we're talking computers and
yeah, we're talking computers, cameras, kiosk enclosures, that kind of stuff. So should we just jump right into the debt and focus on the long term, or should we continue to dip our toe in and come back out? That's kind of how we've been going at it.
Here's the biggest mistake most businesses make, whether it's your kind of business or most businesses, they will build it and they will come, build it and they will come. It usually doesn't happen. And so I see many people go in and build and over-engineer, right? Do you really need it? I mean, the best advice I ever got, I heard from a guy named Peter Thomas, and he was kind of a big entrepreneur from my era. And he said, the biggest lesson I've ever learned is put away the checkbook. Make people solve things with their minds. You know, I'd have a beer session on a Friday. I'd say, how do we get access to all this equipment without paying for it? Sounds insane, right? Well, could you get a sponsor? Could you try some new equipment where they want some brand awareness for their products, right? I would sit there and try to be creative with the financing. Bring them in as an equity partner, potentially, right? Is there other ways to do it? Can you basically rent it? You know, try to build your businesses out of your cash flow. Tough enough to do, and it's so foreign, particularly when you're young. I basically cash flow most of my businesses. Sometimes it's slower, but it depends on market share and first to market, all that kind of stuff. But the one thing I find is everybody's so protective of their ideas. I'm so busy, I don't have time to steal your ideas, right? And most ideas, you could steal ideas, but you can't. It's like Ray Kroc said, you can't steal what I think and what's my next move. So I would basically put away the checkbook. Learn how to build lean. That is the best advice I could give anybody tonight. Learn how to build lean. Because if you don't, your debt will be the greatest downfall for small businesses. Money they can't afford to pay, or cash requirements, or overhead that basically doesn't catch up to your sales flow. And that is the biggest killer of all businesses, in my opinion. So that's what I do. I can afford to fund businesses today. My latest adventure is basically no secret. It's called Rapid Time Networks, and basically it's arbitrage between buyer and seller. And what I'm doing is I've taken the affiliate model offline, and I'm making it basically. I'm going to accountant, and he can become a vendor on my platform as long as he's willing to pay a commission for the referral. It's a paid for referral network. And I'm cash flowing it already, and I'm not going to go and I'm not going to get any debt. I can afford to fund it, but it's core to my principle, so I don't have to make stupid decisions based on the debt requirement or overhead, which I'm now repeating myself. Make sense? Anyway.
Maybe I can just build on that, because I think sometimes when I hear the advice that George has offered, people say, so you're saying I shouldn't take on debt, so I should go slowly and cautiously. And that's not what I heard George say at all. It's just that it's misheard often. They don't build lean. They don't get creative about workarounds. What they do is they say, okay, we've got to go slow so we don't take debt. So if I can, I just wanted to kind of emphasize my takeaway from what you said.
That's exactly right.
And we didn't rehearse this. And we're not paying each other.
Although we did get drunk together in Harrison a few years ago.
All right, anybody else?
My question's for George. With family kind of being there for you at the end of the day and either a network or discouraging you, what do you advise for getting into business with your family?
With family?
Yeah.
Never do it, except I just got into business with my son, so.
Or continuing a family business with, like, if you were to continue a family business with another family member.
Well, here's what I did in my case. I think it's different. Each family dynamic is different. My son, he didn't go to school. He was like, he's like me. He's a sales guy. He was selling cars at 19, right? He didn't want to do post-secondary education of anything. He just wanted enough money to pay for his used Del Sol. But he became an awesome sales guy. Like, he is just friggin' awesome. And so, and he went on to have a successful career, but outside the company, because his success had to be his. It can't because of his mom and dad, because he wouldn't know how good he was. So in my particular case, he had to go out there, and now he's a franchise partner with 2 stores and doing a great job. But he had an outside, his confidence was built in his success. I think that element is critical to have family members that have had outside experience. Succession in other businesses, some have done great jobs, some haven't. I think the thing is that if the spawn have a sense of entitlement, you're screwed, right? I think they have to learn that that's not part of it. But I think that those are the key elements. And there is no business worth ruining a family over. So the question is, can you balance family and business? And it's some have done great jobs. Look at some of the great dynasties out there. And succession is really tough. So I'd say good luck. But I think it has to be brutally honest with you in terms of, can it work? Yeah. Can it not work? Yeah. right?
Put the contracts in place as though they weren't family.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Put the contracts in place as though they weren't family, and you'll all be grateful afterwards.
Yep.
Yeah, next.
I would like to ask George. Blends has opened up a new branch in China. Is it more difficult to do business?
Blends in China?
Yeah, is it?
It sucked.
Is it? That's what I'm gonna ask. So yeah, doing business across culture.
Yeah, well, we do business right now. We've had 4 runs at it. 2 went good, 2 went really bad. Japan and the Philippines worked. China is a nightmare to do business as an entrepreneur because franchising is so... This may come as a surprise to you, but when they pay for it, they don't want to keep paying for it. And I mean, you could talk about the intellectual property. So within the culture, a franchise in China does not work because they do not... They're one generation into a new capital world, and the concept of franchising isn't working in China. It will take a generation for that, particularly with contract law and a few things. And our experience in China was awful. And we terminated our franchise partner over there because they didn't want to play by our rules. And, you know, within 6 weeks we had coffee with Blend's bag that came in from Vietnam, and this was supposed to be our partner. No surprise there. So, you know, even Starbucks had a real tough time going through there. They had a restructuring, so we've pulled out of China. I would not recommend for a franchise from North America going to there unless you're hugely capitalized and got big stick. Particularly when we were in there. So we had our lunch handed to us.
And where are you now in Asia, George?
Yeah, we're in the Philippines. That works really well. Japan, it worked really well, but they have a long legacy of commercial law behind them, where some of these other countries, particularly in the Middle East, did not, and we had a bad experience there as well. So that's been our experience. And some other companies have done exceedingly well there. So, but international expansion for a franchise brand, crapshoot. You have to find the right partner, and you have to be and basically make a huge investment in time and energy, but don't underestimate. You see, I think people are too sensitive about cultural ways. I mean, I used to sit in some of these meetings with these Chinese guys and they say, "Well, that's not the Chinese way." And I said, "Well, that's the Norwegian way." And they go, "What is that?" I says, "It doesn't friggin' matter. It's about what's the right thing, right?" And so I think that we are all too sensitive, particularly Caucasian North Americans going over to these other cultures. We want to do that stuff, but it's just stuff I just am not going to do, right? This is the way it's going to work, and most stuff, yeah, can work, but in China, I mean, people still buy coffee that's too expensive. I mean, they do it here too. I mean, that's why we're successful. I mean, can you imagine $5 for a cup of coffee? Who would do that? Anyway, hope it answers your question.
All right, anybody else? We have a few minutes left still. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Andy. I'm an entrepreneur myself. And my question is, you guys talk about failure. When do you guys realize an idea or a project is a failure, and when do you keep plugging away?
Good question. You go first.
I think the way I'd answer this is twofold. Too early or too late. And without that sound like it's sitting on the fence, is that it's really easy to give up on something when it's too early to give up on it. I kind of sometimes equate the idea of looking after new ideas as being like a gardener, you know, and when the seedlings are coming up, if you're wearing big boots and you stamp around, you'll kill them all, and you don't know which ones were weeds and which ones were going to be flowers. So you've got to nurture the ideas for long enough, but often when you can see things going wrong, you really knew that you should have killed, but you become emotionally attached, and so you then wait too long and it's too late, and the longer you wait, the harder it is. So don't go too early, but give yourself a time at which you really are going to make the decision, because then it gets painful.
That's like being with Chancey Gardner. The gardening thing, cool. You know what it is? The first deal you do, you always wait too long. Because you're all in. You're emotionally attached. You don't want to be thought of as a failure, so you keep writing the checks when you should have stopped a while ago. That happens on your first deal, right? Your second deal is when you cut too early because you don't want to repeat the first deal, right? So you're probably about the third deal by the time you get into the zone, right? and it's really tough. It's the concept of good money after bad is the first one, and I certainly did. I kept on deals when they I was the dog never quit. Well, sometimes you have to. But, I think it really comes down to it where, you go to your trusted advisors, the people who you do respect and to give you that cold water when it comes. So it's hard to say. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what anybody else does or when you quit or when you stay in, is what you want to do. At the end of the day, you have to live with your business decisions. Not your banker, not your mom, not your workers. You have to decide whether you're ready to give up and go on to something else. And if you can live with the decision, then it's the right decision. Period.
All right. Time for one more.
Good evening, guys. Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm doing great. I just wanted to ask you, what was that moment like from going from the idea to going all in? I mean, were you scared? Like, what was it? What was that push that brought you to the edge and to really go forward?
It was January the 10th, December the 10th, 1977, okay? I just signed a lease at Cambie and Broadway for Sandwich Tree, and it was the worst snowstorm of the year, and there was nothing on the road, and I had a Honda Civic with summer tires on, right? And I drove from my Le Burnham Street, a place where I was living with 4 nurses, which I'll never do again. And I drove down there, and it took me 2 hours, and I remember sitting outside that place, sweating, pouring off me, going, I am so scared. And, literally, almost on the verge of a bowel movement. But I didn't do it, and I think it's the overcoming the fear. But one thing I've recognized over time is that fear is a 4-letter word, right? False expectations appearing real. And most of the things we fear, particularly in business, never happen, right? And fear is a natural process, particularly with your first startup, right? And when you're all in. But it's only money. Go make more, right? And it's only a failure of business, not of what you decided to do. And at the end of the day, I'll tell you what's better. Being an entrepreneur. It's way more fun. It's way more rewarding. You feel like you've compressed 2 or 3 lives into one. And, it's just, in retrospect, I made huge mistakes, but 51% have been the right decision. And so I think that at the end of the day, that's what you want to do, because at the end of the day, it's you who have to live with the results.
I'm going to not answer the question directly, but rather I'm going to say I wish I'd started earlier and younger. You think that you need experience, but actually, as you get older, there's a real risk that you get more conservative if you haven't started things, because you start to think about the mortgage and about your kids and about all the other people. And if you're young and single and you don't have any assets, it's the best time to start a business.
Oh, yeah. Down 2 million.
Yeah. Really, because you become, many of us become more risk averse because we've got other people to think of.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for your questions. I wish we could keep going, but we're going to have to draw it to a close. I just want to thank, first of all, our special guests, Paul Cubbon and George Moen, who graciously agreed to speak here tonight. Thank you very much.
Do that again?
And I'd also like to thank Andrew Riley and his colleagues at UBC Sauder School of Business. They were a really big help in terms of helping us get the speakers tonight and just helping spread the word and promote this event. So thank you. And I'd like to thank all of you who attended this event in person, via the webcast. For those who are here, we'd be grateful if you could fill out our feedback form and let us know what you thought of this event, and hopefully it'll help us shape future events. And if you're watching via the webcast, please feel free to send in your feedback via email. We are also hoping to use our webcasting equipment during the networking reception to tape any testimonials you might want to provide. So if you're interested in that, let us know, and we'd be happy to work with you on that. And I just want to mention that we're also putting on another event like this in 2 days in Kelowna at UBC's Okanagan campus. There's going to be 3 speakers at that one. So for more information, you can just check out our website again, the homepage, www.sba-bc.ca, and click on the Kelowna link. And that brings us to the end of this event. So thank you for coming once again. And I'd like to invite you to join us for an informal networking reception till about 7:30. So thanks, everybody.